Here it is. Comrade Malaki should be going now.
Okay.
Let me know. Okay, it shows that it's on. All right, everyone. Welcome to Human Rights Policy Officers hosted web conference on the right of self-determination and reparations. For those of us who know the real meaning of reparations, reparations is self-determination. You can't have reparations without self-determination. Self-determination meaning self-government, self-rule is the primary part of reparations. Monetary compensation is secondary. Monetary compensation is secondary. You actually can be repaired without the monetary compensation, because if we were repaired, then we would have ability to generate our own wealth and create our own wealth outside of constraints by a system that enslaved us and continues to oppress us and restrict us. So that is the real meaning of reparations, self-determination. So this is our call to educate the public and help, and perchance and hopefully mobilize. Because if you know better, most of the times you do better. But our people don't know better, so we don't do better. We're just hopeful without knowledge, and being hopeful without knowledge on how to achieve what you hope for, and most of the times, 9 times out of 9, be absolutely useless. So we have been a hopeful people, but we might as well be hopeless because we don't have knowledge to achieve what we hope for, and we wish and hope for somebody else to achieve it themselves for us, the violator, to achieve the stopping of that violation of the victims. It doesn't happen like that naturally. You can expect a snake, a few mice, to stop swallowing mice. The snake's going to do what it has to do. So we have this web conference to educate the public on what their right of self-determination is, and hope that it will mobilize them as we attempt and are asserting our right of self-determination. This week on the flyer to promote this web conference, we wrote this. If you're looking at your screen, I think I'm sharing the screen. Am I sharing the screen, Comrade Dan? Comrade Malaki? I'm sharing, okay.
You're sharing.
All right.
Sharing.
It reads, and also we advertise this on social media, on Facebook, etc. It says, how to lawfully withdraw consent and not be complicit in the U.S. government's genocide. Now, I'm talking about genocide on more than one front. But the front that's in current attention, or is drawing current attention of the people, is the front in Palestine, what some call Israel, which is a settler state, a military occupation of the land of the Palestinian people. So we created this flyer, how to lawfully withdraw consent and not be complicit in the U.S. government genocide. Of course, there's a genocide going on in Palestine. There's a genocide going on in many other places. In the Congo, there's a genocide going on in Sudan. There's a genocide going on in other areas of the world. And of course, there's a genocide that's been going on for hundreds of years in America. They've almost completed the genocide, at least in name, of the indigenous people. And also there's a genocide going on currently against Afro-descendants or black people in the United States of America. Now, as long as we are consenting by non-resistance, because we're not resisting the government as a whole, most of us are even participating in the government by voting and giving the government legitimacy. When you vote for a government, you give its legitimacy. If you study international politics, normal politics, regular politics, and local politics in America. The government's mandate is legitimized by the number of people that vote for it. So if people don't vote for a government, then it's not legit. Even if 100% of people, for instance, vote for the Democratic Party candidate, if that 100% of people that voted only represent 5% of the population, for example, then that government really doesn't have a legitimate mandate because the majority of people abstained. That's why in recent events you see them voting on resolutions at the UN, but some people abstain from it. They abstain, it means they didn't legitimize it or go against it or say that they're for it. So we just abstaining. When we abstain from voting, we actually delegitimize it. So the government is being legitimized by our participation. So that's consent in a way. But also we consent to it by definitely participating and voting within this system. So we're talking about how can we lawfully withdraw consent and not be complicit. We don't want to look like we're part of that genocide. We don't want to look like we're the ones dropping bombs on babies, women, children, and innocent civilians in Palestine. We don't want to look like we are guilty of what's going on against ourselves in America.
Excuse me, Comrade Ramsey.
Yes.
There's no YouTube link for us. I don't see it. Comrade Shirley doesn't see it either. I don't see it at all. I've been looking.
It's supposed to be streaming. Okay. Sorry. They got it as private. Bear with me. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, I thought it was my phone.
I wish you would let me know that earlier. Can you see it now?
Yes, it's there. I see it.
All right. Sorry, everyone that may be on YouTube. I thought the settings are always the same for every broadcast, but I guess they're not. So it was on private. I had to switch it to public. But this is our Human Rights Policy Officers hosted call on the right of self-determination that we hold every Friday. But today is the last Friday. We're going to be doing it. We're going to switch to Thursdays at 8 p.m. hosted by Human Rights Policy Officers. Those of us who have decided to stand up ourselves and stop human rights abuse as we have a right to, and we will share that with you later. So it's our responsibility. It's the government's responsibility first not to commit violations or to protect us from human rights violations. If they don't do that, then other states should come to the assistance of us. But if other states don't come to the assistance, which many won't against the powerful United States government, then it's our responsibility to stop it ourselves. So today we're talking about how to lawfully withdraw consent and not be complicit in the genocide that's going on in Palestine, but as well as the genocide that's going on against us in America. Because as long as we don't resist, we are complicit. I don't know how many of you may have seen it today, but probably the most watched speech today was the leader of Hezbollah. He gave a public speech. Hezbollah is the political group out of Lebanon. They are on the border fighting with Israel after they attacked and began the war against the Palestinians in Gaza. They always have been helping in the resistance, the illegal occupation, against the illegal occupation of the Israelis on Palestinian territory. So he gave a speech today. And the whole world, those who are aware of Hezbollah, have been waiting to hear word from what Hezbollah leader is going to saying his viewpoint on and what actions he intends to carry out. He made the announcement that they're not going to start war against Israel. He said we've already been at war against the illegal occupation of Israel and their actions that they have committed and began on October the 8th. He also said he said the United States is basically responsible for being the sponsor of somebody. You're responsible. Don't get afraid of me when I tell you this, but I did some time in prison as a youngster, went in as a teenager. I met many murderers in there. Met many people doing a lot of time. Sometimes the murderer was hired and enabled by somebody else, and the person who hired and enabled the murderer actually was doing more time, had a longer sentence than the murderer. United States is an enabler. Them along with other West, especially the Britain, they the ones who started the conflict in the first place by illegally giving somebody else's territory over to Zionists, giving the Palestinian territory, but letting them settle in Palestine, which they did in 1948, and said, okay, you can have part of it. And of course, they gave them an inch, and the Israeli occupiers took the whole thing, took a mile, as they say. But anyway, we're complicit, and the Hezbollah leader said, if you dare think and try to attack us, United States, that would be a terrible decision. That would be foolish for you to attack us. And he warned the United States, the West, and Israel, a strike against them will be met with an equal strike against them, against those who are doing the strike, United States or Israel. He said a life for a life, a civilian for a civilian. You kill our civilians, we'll kill your civilians. So we don't want to be complicit. We want to let the world know that, look, we are not part and parcel of what the United States government does. We're not part and parcel of what they do in the United States. We're not part and parcel of them murdering Dr. King. We're not part and parcel of them murdering Malcolm X, murdering Fred Hampton, murdering many others, sabotaging our black organizations. We're not complicit in anything they do against black people. We're not complicit in the police brutality, the wrongful convictions, etc. And definitely we're not complicit in their foreign policy, what they do around the world. We're not complicit. We weren't complicit in the bomb they dropped on Hiroshima, killing innocent men, women, children, civilians. So they can't condemn Israel because they do the same thing, man. They killed hundreds of thousands of people at one time by dropping bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So what Israel doing is a drop in the bucket compared to the actions of the United States government. But were we complicit in that? What they did in Vietnam? Were we complicit in what they did in Iraq, in Libya? In Iraq, they also lied and used the media as well. And now we find out 21 or 20 years later, there's no weapons of mass destruction, man. There's no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But they lied, and some of our brothers and sisters, parents, aunts and uncles, family members, friends died in Iraq. Or were injured in Iraq fighting for a government that lied to the public and used the media. The media is the tool that the government uses to sway public opinion, because it's public opinion that is the real superpower. Not the United States government, it's the public opinion of the United States that's the superpower. So they got to control the media so they can control the public opinion, so that the government can really be the superpower because they control what the public thinks. And as long as the public can be fooled, we'll be complicit in what they do, and we'll even support it. So now we're supporting many people are supporting actually what's going on in Palestine right now because they don't know any better, because they rely on the media to give them the truth of what's happening. Look up Project Mockingbird and others in the church committee hearings that they had in the 70s that revealed that the government controls media. They also go back to the early 1900s that proved the same thing. So our people don't know what's going on. They're being lied to, so it's up to us to tell the truth, and that's why we are here to reveal the truth and not just reveal the truth. There's a lot of people talking about truth. There's a lot of people revealing what the United States is doing wrong. A lot of us know they do wrong, but what do we do about it? Can we do something better than just protesting or venting our frustration and our disagreement with what's going on? That's what this calls about. How can we lawfully withdraw consent so we're not complicit? So we don't face the consequences that's coming to America because of that genocide and because of other things they do, like they did in Iraq and had to withdraw years later. Said they were going to go to George Bush says, don't worry, we'll be in there quick. I think they called it shock and awe, something like that. We'll shock them, awe them, and then destroy them, and then get out of there. In some months, they end up being there for years, over a decade. And it's still there in Iraq. So it's an illegal occupation, illegal war crime. And now people in Iraq are also fighting their occupation, and they're calling them terrorists as well. We're going to find out tonight that those who fight against illegal occupation are not terrorists, they're freedom fighters. Consent. How do we withdraw consent? Because right now we're consenting to what's going on. Let me share the screen for a minute. If you look at
yes, Comrade Ramzu, it was called shock and awe that George Bush said.
Okay,
that's what he called it, shock and awe.
They end up being the ones shocked. And heck, we should be shocked that they lied. But some of us already know they're liars, but most of us don't know. So we consent to these things. I'm sharing something on the screen. It's on Google. I can Google it so I can show you all the meaning of informed consent. Informed consent. You usually hear that in the medical practice. So I'm going to give you the definition. Today I'm using an example, the medical definition example, but it applies elsewhere. Informed consent is the process in which a healthcare provider educates a patient about the risks, benefits, and alternatives of a given procedure or intervention. The patient must be competent. That's a key word right there. The patient must be competent to make a voluntary decision about whether to undergo the procedure or intervention. Do you all know that people still share? It's a group of people that formerly share the sentiment of people. I think it was like Aristotle or Plato. I think it was Aristotle. But many others from thousands of years ago that said stupid people shouldn't be allowed to vote. Ignorant people shouldn't be allowed to vote. He said, Aristotle said that's like, or it was Plato or Aristotle said this, that's like letting somebody steer a whole ship on the ocean that has no experience being a captain of a ship. Probably never been on a ship in his life, but you're going to give him the power to steer a ship. So they said that's why like the ignorant voting, consenting without being informed, being competent. And a lot of us, most of us, not a lot of us, most of us are incompetent when it comes to making political decisions because we don't know political science. It says to be informed, you got to know the risks of what you're doing or getting ready to do, the benefit of what you're doing or getting ready to do, and the alternatives. Or there's something else you can do besides what you're getting ready to do or what you are doing. We don't know that. Do we know the risk of voting? No, we don't. We experience some of the risks. We don't know before we do it. The risk of voting is one thing we just mentioned. When you vote, then you validating and putting somebody in power to do things that might harm you. That's the risk you take when you're voting. When you vote, you are validating a system to do whatever, even to yourself, against yourselves. The benefit of voting is the people you vote for, they might do right by you. But that hasn't happened concerning black people in America. Looks like it's not even happening concerning white people either. So you got to know the risks, the benefits to having informed consent. But I left something out. Last but not least, you got to know if there's an alternative. And that's what 99.9999, I don't know how many other 9% of our people don't know there's an alternative besides voting or protesting in the system, participating in the political process of the United States of America. We don't know that there's an alternative. Proof is when it comes to voting and we start debating about voting, you will see one comment often, and that is, well, we got to do something. Well, yeah, you got to do something. But it's something else that you should be doing besides voting or even not voting. There's another alternative. But until you know the alternative, then you're not giving informed consent. So the majority of our people are participating in a system without even being informed of an alternative. They're ignorant. So it's uninformed consent. I want to clear it up, because after today, everybody listening is going to be able to give informed consent. And if you consent after this information, then you a devil yourself. We're talking about how to withdraw consent from what the United States is doing. First of all, so we can have liberation. But we dealing and motivating the people because of a current event. We're using that current event to our benefit, to educate the people. Because everybody's marching out there talking about how we don't agree, they're protesting against, or at least posting against, what's going on in Palestine. Besides what's going on, the genocide against ourselves as black people in America. But you still consenting until you resist it formally, you consent to it. How do we withdraw that consent? What do we do? Is there something that we can do? Yeah, there's something that we can do. And for those who are miseducated, I wanted to share something right quick before we go on. Let me preface it for a minute. We see what's going on, and some of us are actually for what Israel is doing. I doubt anybody on this call is, what the illegal occupying state of government of Israel is doing. Well, the Palestinians, they shouldn't have did that. They shouldn't have attacked those people on October the 7th. And they even lied about the extent of the attack. Lying, talking about they decapitated babies and stuff. Then they had to retract that to media because it couldn't be proven by a known lying government. Both governments are known to lie. United States and the Israeli government. They just lied some months ago when they killed that reporter. They sniping reporters over there because they don't want the news to get out. As we just said, the news is a tool. So alternative news can hurt them. It damages them. It makes them lose the war because they have the only narrative. So they've been over there sniping, not just now, this month, but they've been sniping and killing reporters over there. And they killed that reporter some months ago, and they lied about it to the media. No, it was the Palestinians who killed their own reporter. Come on, man. And people bought that. Then they did some investigations and found out, not the Israelis, but the world. And the Israelis had to admit, well, we might have did it, but it was a mistake. We was firing at the Palestinians and they was a shield, so to speak. Then you find out that was a lie. The person was sniped. There was nobody around her. No enemy combatants, enemies of the Israelis around her. They lied. They lied about bombing the hospital. They bombed the hospital. Then they lied. Said, no, it It was the Palestinians who bombed their own hospital. Showed the video. Forgot that they left the timestamp on the video and showed that they were lying. These are liars. So we don't know the extent, the real extent to what the attack was on October the 7th. But if there was an attack, and I applaud the attack. How many people have ever heard of Nat Turner? Anybody ever heard of Nat Turner? I'm sure everybody on here has heard.
Everyone on here should have heard of Nat Turner. If not, they need to learn.
Okay. Now raise your hand or clap if you agree. Clap. Use the clap thing if you can, if you agree with what Nat Turner did. I think we might have that enabled. We agree with what Nat Turner did. There we go. We agree with what Nat Turner did. Nat Turner, if you don't know, Nat Turner was probably the most famous slave rebellion. Yeah, a slave rebellion. Nat Turner slave revolt in Virginia. Nat Turner, during his slave revolt, him and the rebels, the freedom fighters, I don't like that term rebel, but we use it, but freedom fighters, they were fighting for freedom, man. They tired of being enslaved. He had to do something. He had got to revolt. That's natural. But during that revolt, Nat Turner, they killed everything they saw. Everything that was white was considered not right. So it had to go. So they killed women and children as well. If you were mice and you were rebelling against the snakes, you ain't leaving the baby snakes, even if a baby snake can't even swallow a mice. Because we know what it's going to grow up to do. So they even condemned Nat Turner's rebellion. When my daughter's in school, I make sure I go over what my daughter's learning in school so I can debunk it and correct it. So yeah, we learned about Nat Turner. Daddy, he was bad because he killed innocent people. So I had to tell her what I'm about to tell you all. What I'm saying now. When you're fighting for your freedom, your liberation, you have to do whatever's necessary because your daughters and children are dying. They're being enslaved. And you got to cut it off from ever happening again. And also, you have to show, terrorist is a good word sometimes. You have to strike terror into the heart of those who are violating you so they won't do it again. So them plantation masters knew that their family, their children, was facing danger. There would be no plantation owners and own slaves because they know that any given time, their children can be killed as well in a rebellion. So Nat Turner and those other freedom fighters had to do what they had to do. Terrorize them so that slavery to others, and it had an effect as well. So the other slave masters will know what's happening. They're going to think twice about what they're doing. Some of them may stop it. They'll know what's coming. There's always potential. There's a drawback. There's some pushback. There's a consequence of slavery. So Nat Turner was right. Other rebellions were right. Yes, it sounds harsh, killing children, and I say, oh man, that is bad. First, we always say, you don't kill no innocent people. But put you in that situation where you're getting whipped, your family getting killed, your women getting murdered and raped, and your men getting raped as well. You're forced to work on a plantation. What you gonna do? Generation after generation. When you rebel, you don't see nothing but the enemy. I don't care if it's a woman or a child. Because that child going to be the same one raping your women and raping the men, beating you, castrating you, hanging you. It's not our nature to do such things, but when you're put in a desperate situation like this, something drives you to that insanity. You don't question the insane act. What drove the insanity, if you call that insanity? So as you hear people saying October the 7th didn't happen in a vacuum. Something caused that, a situation caused that attack. So just like the slave rebellions, like Nat Turner, Hamas, and others had to do something because they are enslaved in front of the whole world. Nobody does nothing to assist them. Some people like Iran and Hezbollah and others, but nobody assists them, even though the whole world has been admitting for decades that there is an illegal occupation. Israeli occupation is illegal. That they're committing genocide. They've been killing babies and children and men, innocent people there for years before October the 7th. That's what caused October the 7th. And they have a right to resist by any means. Yeah, you can say that, well, they shouldn't have killed the children or innocent people if they did kill children. Well, what would you do? And now, what is Israel? They're killing children. So I'm talking about its defense. Defending what? How you defend an illegal occupation? And the people are not even fighting you back that you're dropping bombs on. But if we pay attention to history, we'll see that oftentimes, and even now, the settlers are not, even though they're not soldiers, they be killing Palestinians as well. They abuse them, spit on them, treat them any kind of way, the women, the old people, and the children. They shoot Palestinians. They've been armed. They go up to a Palestinian's house and say, look, this is our house now. Get out of here. So how would you respond to that? If somebody treated you like that for decades. You been living somewhere in your family house for hundreds of years. They come and say, oh, this is our house now. Get out. If you get out there, shoot you, beat you, and eject you out anyway. Let me read this article. It's a part of this article right quick. It says, finding evolving vitality in humanitarian law for decades, the General Assembly of the United Nations, once described as the collective conscience of the world, has noted the right of peoples to self-determination, independence, and human rights. Indeed, as early as 1974, Resolution 3314 of the United Nations General Assembly prohibited states from any military occupation, however temporary. In relevant part, the resolution not only went to affirm the right to self-determination, freedom, and independence of people forcibly deprived of that right, particularly peoples under colonial and racist regimes or other forms of alien domination, but noted the right of the occupied to struggle and to seek and receive support in that effort. Listen, the term armed struggle was implied without precise definition in that resolution, and many other early ones that upheld the right of indigenous persons to evict an occupier. This imprecision was to change on December the 3rd, 1982. At that time, the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3743 removed any doubt or debate over the lawful entitlement of occupied people to resist occupying force by any and all lawful means. The resolution reaffirmed, quote, the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. This is all the way in 1982. They did it before that, but this is 1982, the last resolution. So look, now if you're being occupied, you got a right to kill the occupier. Because you have a right of self-determination. and all other means are not working. So now the last recourse is armed revolution, armed struggle. If you pay attention to what's been going on in Palestine over the years, even recently, marching doesn't work. When they marched, last time they marched, they killed a lot of them. Hundreds of them got shot, killed, just for marching. They're killing reporters, just trying to get the story out to let people know what's going on. They won't even let you do that. If you try to report on something, they'll kill you. Right now, they're targeting reporters in Gaza. They say, look, everybody move to the south of Gaza. People move to the south, they still drop bombs on it. And especially, they're targeting the houses of reporters, of human rights attorneys. So, protesting not help, you're still getting killed. Trying to make the world aware, writing about it, talking about it, you're still getting killed for doing that. And you're definitely getting killed for just living, because any day now, settlers can come and say, look, I want this house, and they make you move. So there's no innocent bystanders, including civilians, Israeli civilians in Palestine territory. So it's fair game. If I steal somebody's car, or if I have a car, period, I'm going through neighborhoods killing people. And if you jump in the car with me, you ain't doing the killing, but you jumped in the car with me, and they come to attack my car, then it's fair game. You shouldn't have got in the car. So you shouldn't have got on that territory, occupied that territory. I don't care if you were a family that's civilians. You know that's stolen territory. But anyway, so they have a right to do what they do. But we're talking about how can we withdraw consent to that. I just want to let you know, look, what they're doing is right. It's been acknowledged. Even by the United States. They signed these resolutions because they wanted to use the resolutions for their benefit. They wanted to use the right of self-determination for their benefit. But when the right of self-determination is applied to those whom they have no interest in being self-determining, it doesn't apply. United States, the only nation that voted recently, that voted against a ceasefire. Only nation. Well, and Israel, of course. I don't even call them a nation. Because it doesn't apply. Human rights don't apply to them. Self-determination doesn't apply to those who they have no interest in being self-determining and enjoying their human rights. Bear with me. And breeze through this, then we're going to open up the floor for discussion. But we got to be educated today. We got to be informed so we can have informed consent, and so that we can be informed enough not to consent, to withdraw consent. You don't even know that you can withdraw consent. I'm sharing another document. Matter of fact, if you look at it, this is written by a scholar out of Princeton and Tel Aviv University in Israel. As you know, a lot of Jews, so-called Jews, Jewish converts, the real Jews don't even look European. A lot of them are actually against what's going on in Israel. They're against Zionism, period. I'm not going to go over that history, but the majority of Jews are not. That was created for a reason. Zionism was matter of fact, they take the founder of Zionism, they say was an atheist. They're using Zionism as an excuse. And you can tell that the rest of them are atheists as well that's over there running that government. The real religious Jews have been holding marches. Hey, they had a march, yesterday, day before yesterday? A large march at Central Station, Grand Central Station, if that's what you call it. 400 people were arrested for a peaceful march. Jews led that in America. Anyway, I'm sharing a document called We the Peoples, The Strange Demise of Self-Determination. The strange demise, because self-determination was even promoted by the American government. It was promoted by them. American president, even though it was started, if you read the history, the Russians started promoting it in the early 1900s. Then it was suggested to the American president that he grabbed the baton from the Russians to start promoting. And he did. But it was for the benefit of Europeans who were killing each other. They weren't thinking about no Palestinians. They weren't thinking about black people in Africa. They weren't thinking about Asians. They weren't thinking about people in South America, the indigenous people down there. They were talking about self-determination Europeans. So once the self-determination, the European people brought themselves to peaceful agreement on the right of self-determination, they stopped promoting it and actually started working against it when it applied to us, to others. So that's why we're ignorant. So this author out of Princeton University and Tel Aviv and Israel University said, look, there's a reason behind the demise of self-determination. Why people don't even know. The most oppressed people in the world, black people in America, don't even know about the right of self-determination. Go ask 10 people what the right of self-determination is, and I guarantee you they don't know. And don't ask 10 people on this call either. Let me read you something. I'm just going to read a statement. Oh, yeah. Let me read this. At the twilight of World War I, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, 1918, now, 1918, that's over 100 years ago, enthroned the people's right of self-determination as a paramount principle of international legitimation and warned, self-determination is not a mere phrase, it is an imperative principle of action which statesmen will henceforth ignore at their peril. Robert Lansing, Wilson's Secretary of State, acknowledged the power of self-determination but lamented the phrase is simply loaded with dynamite. What a calamity that the phrase was ever uttered. What misery it will cause. So the president is promoting this, but his Secretary of State is seeing into the future. So hold on, we're promoting it for the benefit of Europe. But it's going to bring us misery. It's loaded with dynamite. And we're seeing now it's loaded with some real dynamite. Because those who are being denied self-determination have the right to use dynamite in any means necessary to achieve that self-determination. And they're using it. So the Secretary of State was saying, Mr. President, hold on now. We don't want the people who we are denying self-determination to know that they have this right and use this right against us. We don't want those who we are oppressing and victimizing around the world. And we definitely don't want black people and indigenous people in America to assert that right because it will break us up and destroy our power. So they made sure they hid it from you. And now to this day, you don't have informed consent because you don't even know you have a right of self-determination, black people. You don't even know that you can vote yourself out of this system instead of continuing to participate and validate this system by voting within it. Consenting out of ignorance, uninformed consent. So we have a right ourselves to withdraw from what's going on, black people. We don't have to keep consenting to this. They kept us ignorant because they are scared of us withdrawing consent and taking power, because the phrase power to the people, that's a self-determination slogan. It's not a phrase that was created by the Black Panthers or the Black Power movement of the 60s and 70s. It's been a phrase, a natural phrase since time immemorial. Power to the people. Thousands of years ago, they knew power to the people. But as the president said here, it's not an empty slogan. It's not a mere phrase. It is an imperative principle of action. So we got to act upon our right of self-determination in order to take ourselves out of this situation. Let me read something right quick. Bear with me. I'm going to hurry up through this. The other conflict that was popular before this war against the Palestinians, or this current battle in the ongoing war against the Palestinians, was the war or conflict going on in Ukraine. I'm sharing, if you look at your screen, the Declaration of Independence. This is their Wikipedia page, the Declaration of Independence of Ukraine. We're going over this, we're talking about consent now. It all relates. Bear with me. Why did Ukraine declared independence in 1991 away from the Soviet Union? Because they were part of the Soviet Union. 1991. Now, actually, if you look, the first people to acknowledge their independence, was Russia. Poland and Canada, those were the first nations to acknowledge the independence of Ukraine. The same nation that they say want to deny their independence right now, lying to you again with the media, is the first nation that actually recognized their independence. They didn't go against it. As I just said earlier, it was actually the Soviet Union, who was promoting self-determination, and it was advised that the United States president not look bad and start promoting it as well and take the baton. See? United States was one of the last states. Look on down here. It was one of the last people to acknowledge it, to acknowledge their independence. That wasn't the first. They're on down the line. They're all the way down the line. I want to share this. This is their. So I'm gonna read some words from their declaration. So listen now. Listen. Because this is our lesson. If we follow Ukraine, we'll be liberated. Active Declaration of Independence. We're nothing but about 2 sentences. In view, this is what they say. This is their reason. This is their Declaration of Independence. Very small declaration. This is the translation. In view of the mortal danger surrounding Ukraine in connection with the state coup in the USSR, the Soviet Union, on August the 19th, 1991. Now, that's the first reason for declaring independence, because they want to show that withdraw consent to what the government of the USSR is doing, because it's putting them in danger. Like we just said, what the United States government does worldwide is putting us in danger. We don't consent to what they're doing. So just like Ukraine said, okay, in view of that danger, listen now. Then it said, continuing the 1,000-year tradition of state development in Ukraine, proceeding from the right of a nation to self-determination in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations and other international legal documents. Listen. Proceeding from the right to self-determination. So these are reasons that they declared independence and separated themselves from the Soviet Union. Ukraine in 1991. Russia being the main state of the Soviet Union. Soviet means state. So actually they have the same name as United States. Soviet Union means Union of States. United States means what? Union of States. You used to call it a union. So he said, first of all, we're in danger because of actions of the government. We're in danger. So we're going to withdraw consent. We're going to declare our self-determination. That withdraws consent and separates us from them. But we're not doing it just because of danger, but that's a good reason for us to separate. That's what they said. But we're also continuing our 1,000-year tradition because we're used to being on our own anyway. Black people, we were used to being on our own prior to 400 and something years. We used to govern ourselves till somebody came and conquered us. And now we're going to legitimize that same government that we didn't give consent to conquer us and enslave us. I don't care if they call it so-called let us free. You ain't free until you govern yourself. You're still under them because they are the majority. So we're proceeding because we are used to being free. We want to be free again. But most of all, we're proceeding because we have a right to do so. They said in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations and other international legal documents, main one being the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. They have a right to be independent of the Soviet Union. We have a right to be independent of the United States government. So we're withdrawing our consent. That's how you withdraw consent to what's going on, black people. Otherwise, you're part and complicit in the actions that the United States is doing. And like the Hezbollah leader said today, it's not the Israeli government is not to blame. Well, they are to blame. But the people who enable them, the government of the United States who enables them is to blame. So you're going to suffer the consequences, United States, for what you're doing. Listen, I'm going to close out. Bear with me. They're telling you, look now, we have an out. How do you withdraw? How do you really withdraw consent to this? By separating ourselves from this whole system that's committing these acts of genocide against Palestinians, against everybody else in the world, and definitely against us in America. By asserting our right of self-determination in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 1 says all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. We determine our political status. My political status is independent of this devilish government who conquered, murdered, and enslaved my people and treat us the way they treat us to this day, and we're independent of what they're doing worldwide. The right of self-determination. That's the only way to do that. Let me read this article right quick. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article. Just a few sentences. Do African Americans have the right to internal self-determination? Written by Sarah Furman. This is an attorney, a human rights attorney, international law, doctor of international law. A white lady at that. She wrote this article in 2015 because of what was going on then. Popular. That's when protests really got popular against police brutality. But in her view and her expertise, she wanted to consult, utilizing her expertise, she wanted to consult black people, saying, look, black people, let me tell you what you should do according to law. Yeah, you protesting against something, but that's not going to stop it. Let me tell you something according to law, something that you can do that's effective in withdrawing your consent and taking power away from police brutality, away from the government who enables this, instead of all the protesting that you're doing. She says some feel that the American legal system is broken and thus cannot address the challenges that these events have raised. Others argue that the domestic system is working perfectly and that it has been designed to work against blacks and other minority groups. Of course, those who know political science, we know tyranny of the majority. We know that a majority white system is automatically against minorities. Any system is automatic. I don't care if it's a majority black system. If the whites are minorities, they're going to be the victims because naturally we're going to want what's in our interest of the majority. And that's the law. That's fair. You got to give 9 people what they want versus the one person that don't want it. But oftentimes in this system, what the 9 people want, the majority want, is against the very life of the minority. So we're always going to be victims. Listen, it says, if the domestic legal system is not seen as one that can effect change, one must ask what other avenues are open to minorities in America. Read that again. If the domestic legal system is seen as one that is not seen as one that can effect change, one must ask what other avenues are open to minorities. There go that consent again, informed consent. We don't know that there's other alternatives, so we're not giving informed consent. That's the purpose of this call, this conference. What other avenues are open? Because we don't know. She says one such option is the right to self-determination. Self-determination has been poetically described as the right of a people to decide their own destiny. More prosaically, more realistically, it ensures a people's right to govern themselves or to participate in their own governance. I'm going to close out. She says the advantages of exercising the right have largely gone unexplored. I mean, black people haven't even explored the right of self-determination. But if one imagines the right being used by African American and black communities in light of the Ferguson protests, one can see the right's enormous potential for change. See, black people, we have weaponry that we're not even using. We can stop the injustice against ourselves. We don't have to rely and petition the government to stop the injustices. We can stop it ourselves by saying, well, we withdraw consent. You don't have no power over us. We're taking control of our communities. Your government has no more power as we speak. We declare independence. That's the right of self-determination. We've been going too long, so I'm not going to continue, but I was going to share also the U.S. policy on self-determination with the U.S. government themselves. U.S. government itself acknowledged the right. It had to acknowledge once it ratified these documents at the UN, but they even spoke on it in 2016 about the right of self-determination. And the U.S. government itself, the chairman, quote, said, people have rights in this country. So if the people of San Diego want to be part of Mexico, they can just vote on it, and it's adios, San Diego. He's talking about how to assert the right of self-determination. He was referring to the people of San Diego being Mexicans, and if they want to take over San Diego and make it part of Mexico, they can do so because of the right of self-determination. They can separate from the government. They can take over their territory based on their right of self-determination, and black people have the same right. Everybody in the United States have the right. Everybody in the world has the right. The Palestinians have the right. And if that is denied, then you have the right to assert and enjoy that by any means necessary, including armed struggle. So black people, anybody listening, if you don't want to be complicit in what's going on, if you say that's not me, I don't bomb those people, then separate yourself from it. Don't just express dissent. Withdraw consent. Just declare our right of self-determination. And as the U.S. government itself said just in 2016, the chairman himself of the Senate committee said, it's as simple as the black people holding a vote to say that they want to be independent of the government, and if they vote for independence in whatever city or whatever area of a city, whatever area, if the majority of them say, look, we want to be independent of that, then they can declare independence. And now they are distinct entities separated from a violating government, a human rights violating, a criminal, genocidal government. Until then, you are complicit. You are part of the American machinery because you empower it. What paid for those weapons? What paid for those jets? What paid for those bombs that's being dropped on the Palestinians right now? You paid for it. We paid for it. For them. We got to withdraw consent to that. So now in the whole world, like the Hezbollah just said, look, civilian for a civilian. Kill our civilians, we'll kill your civilians. We don't want to do it, but hey, if it'll stop you from killing our civilians, I'm sorry, but we got to take some of your civilians. So we're letting them know, look, we're not civilians of America. We're in a forced position of minorities inside a white democracy, an illegal white democracy. They are occupiers as well. They just like the Israelis. That's why they can't condemn Israel, because the American government is Israel. They are illegal occupiers as well. And we have a right, just like the Palestinians, to resistance against that occupation. Some people were, of course, condemning, even those who are on Palestinian side, those who are with human rights. And look, we do condemn Hamas killing the civilians. They have a right to kill soldiers now. They can't kill civilians. Okay, then. Accept your position. So they have a right to kill soldiers. So we have a right as well to kill soldiers in America. I'm not promoting that. Don't let me scare any of you all. But we have a right to assert our right of self-determination. If they try to stop that, we can pick them off if we want to. I'm hosting this from Russia right now because it might come to the point where we need some assistance. We're going to start picking them off if they try to deny us our self-determination. Because we ain't going for it no more. I don't know about everybody else, but we ain't going for it. Not as human rights policy officers. We have a human right. And if nobody's going to stop us or stop the violations against us, then we got to stop it ourselves. Nobody came to the assistance of those Palestinians, so they had to do whatever they had to do, and that's what they did on October the 7th. You know how many hundreds of Palestinians were killed before October the 7th this year alone? This year alone. You know how many black people is going to be killed this year, have already been killed this year in America? How do we stop it? We've got to withdraw consent, take over our territory, disband those police forces, and if they try to stop us, then we resist by all means available. We might have to come to that Nat Turner point where we kill everything white because it ain't right. Don't let me scare you all, but some people may reach that level of sanity that, look, man, if I gotta terrorize you to leave me alone, I'll have to hurt your family. So though I know the enemy is listening to us, this is a human rights call. We're quoting human rights document. We're sharing the law with our people. The law of resistance, their right of resistance, their right of self-determination, and also their right to do whatever's necessary if you try to forcibly deny us that. And we're sharing with the people procedures on how to withdraw consent. It's as simple as holding a vote, which you said, U.S. government. You acknowledged all around the world, and you did it yourself. So people, we're voting for independence. One way of voting for our independence and asserting our right of self-determination, we're saying go to our reparations app. When you register for the app, you are becoming part of a database of people that don't consent to this. A legal database of people that don't consent. And once enough people don't consent, then us as human rights policy officers and those who may want to stand up, we have a right to declare independence and defend that independence by any means necessary. You don't have to defend it with us, but at least give us your consent. Unless you consent to what the government is doing to you and others around the world. I'm sorry for taking long. We had some technical difficulties at first. And we got to give a thorough explanation and education because our people are acting ignorantly and we are condemning ourselves with our own ignorance. This is serious. Yeah, I'm heated at what's going on by watching those babies being murdered. But I'm also heated and been heated because of what has been happening to black people in America. That's what motivates me, first of all. But this is an opportunity to learn from what's going on internationally and use that as an example to what we should be doing, as a lesson to what we should be doing. Withdrawing our consent, not participating in the actions of this government, and finally getting justice for ourselves. If we want that, and I know you want it. No, who in their right mind say, I don't want justice? Go find somebody. Go find a drunk man on the street and say, do you want justice? He'll say, yeah, I want justice. So if you want justice, then do what's right to get justice. And that's what we're sharing on this call. It's called the right of self-determination. Everybody go to reparations.app, withdraw your consent. And pay attention to what we are doing as we take concrete actions, not just online, but in person. Human rights policy officer, we hit the ground. We hit the ground in Detroit, rallying tens of thousands of people to hundreds of thousands to assert their right of self-determination. We're on the ground in Jackson, Mississippi. We're spreading this nationwide for people to stand up and assert that right. And then we defend that right without contradiction. Thank you all for listening. I'm sorry for going so long, but I had to be thorough. I had to be long because I wanted to be strong. We're going to open up the floor for questions, comments, input, critiques, discussion. Before we do that, Comrade Dan is going to give us a couple of guidelines so this process can go by smoothly.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And welcome to any new guests or to the new guest that's on here to learn about their right of self-determination. Now, I'm going to say this. I want this to be clear. You came, now you've heard legal law documents from law professors, human rights professors. You know, this is not something that Comrade Ramsey's making up. Dan. It's not something that we're making up. This is something that's...
Hold on for a second.
Go ahead.
Let me share one.
New Atlantic Charter. New Atlantic Charter.
Let me share one last thing. Bear with me, everyone. Let me share one last thing. This is a document they quote. So he said I shared the law, but I didn't show you the law. I just quoted it. But let me show you one thing. Just one thing. I'm not going to show you the others. I don't want to take too much of your time. This is a United Nations resolution that gives the right, acknowledges the right. Don't give the right. They don't give you rights. They just acknowledge rights. You have natural rights, but the United Nations and the nations of the United Nations acknowledge those natural rights by codifying them and putting them on paper and signing that they acknowledge these natural rights. This is a resolution 3743. I think it was enacted in 1982. General Assembly, United Nations General Assembly Resolution. Importance of the universal realization of the right of peoples to self-determination and of the speedy granting, don't prolong it, give them their independence. Now, the speedy granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples for the effective guarantee and observance of human rights. I'm on just a few quotes from this resolution. Bear with me. It even mentions people by name. Listen to this resolution. 82 was how many years ago? Was that like 41 years ago? My God. Considering that the denial of inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, sovereignty, independence, and return to Palestine, and the repeated acts of aggression by Israel against the peoples of the region constitute a serious threat to international peace and security. This was written in 82 at the United Nations. For this to become a resolution, nations have to agree to it. This is reaffirming, I'm reading another part, reaffirming the importance of the universal realization of the right of peoples to self-determination, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity, and of the speedy granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples as imperative to the full enjoyment of all human rights. Listen. Reaffirms the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. Listen. Says we strongly condemns those governments that do not recognize the right to self-determination and independence of all peoples still under colonial and foreign domination and alien subjugation, notably the people of Africa and the Palestinian people. Listen, this is in 41 years ago. Listen, last thing I want to read. Strongly condemns the expansionist activities of Israel in the Middle East. Expansionists. Those settlers, so-called innocent people that were killed on October 27th, they were involved in illegal expansion. So it said they strongly condemn the expansionist activities of Israel in the Middle East and the continual bombing of Palestinian civilians, which constitutes a serious obstacle to realization of the right of self-determination and independence of the Palestinian people. I just wanted to share that because Dan said we'd be sharing with you law. We just quoted law. We didn't share with you the actual documents. We didn't share with you this document that I just read. We didn't share with you this document that's on your screen right now called the Declaration on the Right and Responsibility of Individuals, Groups, and Organs of Society to Promote and Protect universally human rights and universally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms. We didn't share that, but that's what we're operating off of as human rights policy officers, because we have the right and the responsibility to stop violations. If a government, these governments don't do it, then it's up to the victims, to the individuals. Even if we're not victims, even if we see people being victims of human rights violations, we have a right to come to their rescue. If I had the power right now, and we're striving to have the power, we're organizing our own capacity to intervene, humanitarian intervention in America on our behalf, as well as have the capacity to intervene if the world's not doing anything about what's going on besides using rhetoric about what's going on in Palestine. Just wanted to share that. Those are the laws that Comrade Dan is talking about. We're sharing with you to let you know the power that you have that you don't even know you have, so that you can give informed consent, make an informed decision. Sorry about that, Comrade Dan. You can continue.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you. I'm glad you stopped me so you could get that part through, because it's imperative that the people understand exactly what their power is. As you said, power to the people. It's not something that's just an empty slogan. That is who powers this government. The government has no power. The government receives its power from the consent of the people. And that's why we're talking about withdrawing consent. We take consent, withdraw our consent, the government is powerless to operate. But I'm here to give a couple guidelines. That way everyone has the opportunity to ask a question or to speak or give comment or commentary. If it's something that they don't understand, to have the opportunity to have full understanding. Because the way this works is you must fully understand your power. You must fully understand your rights. That's not given. These are your God-given rights that you are born with, that has been manipulated into you thinking that they have to give you these rights or you have to protest for these rights. That's not true. Your rights are a birthright. That's where the word birthright comes in. It's a birthright. You're born with these. So what we do here is if you want to ask a question or you have a question or comment, tap your screen, highlight your mic. You ask your question. Once you've asked your question, you go back on mute, let your question be answered by Comrade Ramzu only. That's verbally or in the chat. And if you don't want to speak out your question, if you put your question into the chat, it will be read out to the public by Comrade Malakia, one of our officers. We'll read it out. And then if you have a comment, let your question be answered first, and then your comment next. Keep your comments short. That way others can that might have a question or comment will have the opportunity to do so. But the one thing that's most important, everything you've learned here, you must share with your family. Start with your family. Start in your household. And definitely these documents that I'm hoping you were taking down, copying and pasting and putting in a file so you can go back and look them over so you can get a better understanding or a more prevalent understanding. That way you can speak this, you can translate this back to your people, you can bring them back to these documents and show them, look, we have this right. So it's very important that you share this information. It's very important that if you don't understand something and you don't want to speak or type into the chat, you can call the hotline. That's 888-999-6530. And we'll attempt to give you the best recourse of action for you to take. But you must share this information. It must be shared. This is the only way it's going to work, is if we stand up as a people in our communities where we are the majority occupants of. That's what this is all about. That's what the right of self-determination means, to be self-determined. So I need each and every one of the folks on this conference to be determined to go tell everyone they know that you see in a struggle, that you see is homeless, being gentrified, police brutality, that has family members that's incarcerated. All of that can be overturned instantly if you share this information and get the people to understand the powers to the people. And I yield.
Thanks, Comrade Dan. I'm going to unlock the mics so that you can make your comments, ask your questions, give your critiques, give shout outs, whatever. Enter into whatever discussion concerning this, of course. But before we do that, let's give opportunities to those who are on YouTube before we stop the YouTube stream. Are there any comments or any questions on YouTube, Comrade Malakia?
I'm checking in. No, they weren't.
Okay, I'm going to end the YouTube stream. If those on YouTube want to take part in the rest of this web conference, you see the link in the description on YouTube, and you can click that link and join the conversation. But as for now, I'm going to end that